did so good.
I love you.
I love you too.
Man, I love you. You my everything.
Oh my God. Lord, I love you, Lou.
So I can close the door.
I love you, Lou.
Take your time. Man, I love you. You my everything.
Thank you so much. Here, give me a kiss.
I love you too.
So perfect.
It gets better.
Yo, my baby bitch is out here. I can't go outside.
You don't punish me.
This is Tyrone Davis Jr., also known online as T2 and Stepdaddy Drew, a beloved content creator and father who lost his life on a long-awaited vacation with the woman he loved the most. On the evening of December 27, 2025, Tyrone was found critically injured near the Southwest Archer Road underpass in Gainesville, Florida. 911 callers reported a man down near the roadway, and first responders arrived to find Tyrone unresponsive with catastrophic head trauma. He was rushed to the hospital, but doctors later confirmed the damage was irreversible. Tyrone was declared brain dead and ultimately pronounced dead. Just hours earlier, he'd been enjoying what was supposed to be a beautiful Christmas celebration in a cabin. But the most disturbing part isn't only how he died, it's how he ended up alone in a place his family says he never should have been, and why the story of what happened next kept changing depending on who was telling it. But before we get to the conflicting timelines, we have to go back to who Tyrone Davis Jr. really was, the life he built online and offline, and the relationship that became the last known link to his final hours. This is the life and death of Tyrone Davis Jr.
It gets better.
You know?
They do. Happy birthday, baby! Happy birthday, baby! Thank you so much.
You ain't so wrong, girl. Why you so wrong like this, dude? You so wrong, baby.
Let me go now.
Tyrone Davis Jr. was born in 1990 into a family that would later become the backbone of his identity. While his exact birthday has not been publicly disclosed, those close to him describe his early years as deeply rooted in family connection, responsibility, and a strong sense of loyalty. He was raised with an understanding that showing up mattered, whether that meant being present for relatives, stepping in when someone needed help, or carrying emotional weight without complaint. Before children ever entered his life, Tyrone was already someone others leaned on, a role he accepted naturally rather than reluctantly. From an early age, Tyrone was known for his warmth and humor. Family members often described him as the kind of person who could lighten a room simply by being in it. He had an expressive personality, quick wit, and ease with people that made connections feel effortless. At the same time, there was a seriousness beneath that charm, an awareness of responsibility that shaped how he moved through life. Even before adulthood, he understood that stability was not automatic. It had to be built, protected, and sometimes fought for. And that understanding would quietly shape every step he took forward. Tyrone's formal schooling followed a fairly typical path, though details about specific institutions have not been widely shared. What is known is that he was not someone who faded into the background. He was social, engaged, and expressive, often gravitating towards spaces where personality and presence mattered as much as credentials. Friends recall him as someone who learned best by doing, by interacting, creating, and experimenting rather than following rigid structures. That learning style would later translate directly into how he worked. As he moved into adulthood, Tyrone found his footing in digital spaces. He became a content creator, building a presence on YouTube and social media under names like T2 and Stepdaddy Drew. His work blended humor, lifestyle content, and personality-driven commentary. He wasn't chasing polish or perfection. Instead, his appeal came from authenticity. Viewers followed him because he felt real, unfiltered, expressive, and unafraid to show both confidence and vulnerability. And soon enough, that online presence became more than a hobby. Content creation allowed Tyrone to connect with people far beyond his immediate circle. He built a following that appreciated his relatability and his ability to turn everyday moments into something engaging. To many, he felt familiar, like someone they already knew. He leaned into that role, understanding connection, not virality, was what kept people coming back. His work wasn't about views, it was about presence. But while his online life was growing, his personal life was taking shape in ways that mattered even more. At the center of that personal life was his relationship with the woman publicly known as Lulu, sometimes identified as Kiara. Their relationship, as presented online and through family accounts, appeared affectionate, playful, and deeply intertwined. They shared moments publicly, videos from trips, lighthearted games, laughter, and inside jokes. To outsiders, they looked happy. But then, something more serious began to emerge. This wasn't a casual relationship. It carried weight, history, and intention. Tyrone wasn't someone who treated relationships lightly, and those close to him say he invested deeply once he committed. He believed in partnership, not just emotionally, but practically. Sharing life meant sharing responsibility, planning for the future, and building something stable together. And it was at this point that the relationship became central to his story. There was genuine beauty in what they shared. Videos from their Christmas cabin trip showed a couple enjoying each other's presence in quiet, intimate ways. Games, laughter, shared space. There was no visible tension in those moments. It was just two people seemingly enjoying time together, removed from daily stress. But relationships are rarely defined by what's visible. Behind closed doors, dynamics can shift in subtle ways. According to family accounts, there were moments of tension in the relationship, arguments that did not always resolve cleanly, disagreements that lingered longer than expected. Nothing that on its own screamed danger, nothing that would immediately prompt alarm. Instead, the kind of issues many couples face, especially when lives are tightly intertwined. But as the relationship deepened, so did its complexity. Tyrone became a father, a role that reshaped his priorities overnight. He embraced that responsibility fully. Friends and family described him as devoted, protective, and proud. His children were not an accessory to his identity, they were central to it. He spoke about them often, planned around them, and structured his life with them in mind. Fatherhood anchored him. He made him more cautious, more focused, more determined to create stability. It also heightened his desire for a solid partnership, someone who could share the weight of raising children and building a future. In that context, his relationship took on even greater significance. But with that significance came pressure. As time passed, family members say the relationship became more volatile. There had been repeated arguments between the couple that seemed to indicate that their relationship was slowly becoming toxic. And yet, Tyrone stayed. Not because he didn't recognize problems, but because he believed that whatever it is they have is worth repairing. And so none of their relationship problems were ever aired by Tyrone. He stayed, no matter how hard it became for them. But there is a difference between commitment and endurance, and that difference would soon become impossible to ignore. In the days leading up to the end of December, Tyrone and his partner were still together, still presenting a united front publicly. But as the final days of December unfolded, the relationship reached a breaking point. What had once been manageable tension grew sharper. The arguments between the couple became more and more frequent. And while no one outside that relationship could fully see what was happening in real time, the foundation was clearly reaching its end. Because what begins as disagreement can quietly evolve into something else entirely. And when that evolution happens behind closed doors, the consequences can arrive without warning. And then, everything changed. On the evening of December 27, 2025, Tyrone Davis Jr. and his partner were together in a Christmas cabin trip in Florida. Everything there seemed peaceful, and their social media posts of the trip did not indicate any kind of problem. But then, something happened. At some point during the trip, an argument broke out. According to family accounts, the disagreement escalated and did not de-escalate. The situation reached a point when they were separated. At least that is what the public knows for now, because whatever happened in those remaining hours remains uncertain. And little did anyone outside that moment know that separation would become the turning point. After the argument, Tyrone was no longer with his partner. Family members later stated that he was left behind or separated from her during the confrontation. The exact circumstances of how and why he was separated remain disputed, but what is consistent is that Tyrone was alone afterward. He was left in the area of Southwest Archer Road near an underpass in Gainesville, Florida. And just minutes later, emergency calls came in reporting a man down in or near the roadway. The caller described a male down unresponsive near the underpass, and the caller also stated that they were blocking traffic to prevent further harm. That man that the caller was referring to was Tyrone. Right at that moment, law enforcement and emergency medical services were dispatched. The call referenced a vehicle versus pedestrian incident involving a sedan. Responders arrived to find Tyrone severely injured. He was unresponsive and suffering from significant head trauma. However, the most alarming discovery came after medics assessed his condition. Tyrone's injuries were catastrophic. He was transported to a nearby hospital where doctors attempted life-saving measures. Despite their efforts, the extent of his head and skull injuries was severe. Family members were later informed that Tyrone had suffered irreversible brain damage. It was only after doctors completed their evaluations that the horrifying truth emerged. Tyrone was declared brain dead. And soon enough, his family was faced with a reality they were not prepared for. Tyrone's condition did not improve. After medical confirmation that there was no chance of recovery, he was pronounced dead from his injuries. The loss was immediate. Tyrone's death, however, did not end the questions. Instead, it shifted them. As the family began processing what had happened, they were confronted with something that only made the loss heavier. The story surrounding Tyrone's final hours did not remain consistent. What they were told changed depending on who was speaking and when the explanation was given. And that was when concern turned into disbelief. Tyrone's sister went live publicly not to stir outrage, but to explain why the family was asking questions in the first place.
My nephew's skull was fractured so bad. They say the trauma that hit him, that blunt force, broke his skull and caused pieces to go to the front of his temple on both sides. On both sides. Sound like a Hennessy bottle to me, or it sound like something with trauma force that can do your head like that in the back of your head. His back and his head. So let me tell you something. I don't know and I don't care who don't like my live or who got something to say about Tasha why you did that. Because I needed to do that. At the end of the day, nobody ain't in our shoes. We getting attacked back to back. Yes, it is God will. Yes, it's already written. God know how he was going to check out before he left here. But guess what? Somebody need to be held accountable for your actions.
According to her, Tyrone had been at the cabin for days leading up to the incident. On Saturday afternoon, around 4 to 5 p.m., the family says Tyrone and Lulu were riding together when they got into a disagreement. What happened next, according to Lulu's own account to the family, is where the confusion began. She reportedly told them that Tyrone asked to be let out of the car. But then the explanation shifted. The family was told that Lulu pulled over, let Tyrone out on the side of the road in Gainesville, and drove off. She later said she waited at a nearby gas station for about 5 minutes, expecting him to walk to her. And that was the first point where the family struggled to understand. Because within those same minutes, according to what they were later told, emergency vehicles appeared, police cars, ambulances, and instead of waiting, Lulu reportedly returned to the scene where Tyrone was already being loaded onto a stretcher. Right at that moment, the story began to fracture. According to Tyrone's sister, Lulu later told family members that Tyrone had fallen at a gas station and hit his head. But the family could not reconcile that explanation with another version that Tyrone had been let out of the car somewhere else entirely. And then there was another change. The family says they were later told Tyrone had been found under a bridge on Archer Road on the side of the road. They were told that a police officer approached him and that Tyrone staggered before collapsing. But there was one problem. The injuries Tyrone suffered did not align, in the family's view, with a simple fall. When the Davis family arrived at the hospital, doctors explained that Tyrone had suffered severe blunt force trauma to the head, with extensive skull fractures, both front and back. His injuries were described as catastrophic. According to his sister, doctors told them the trauma was significant enough to cause pieces of his skull to shift. And at that point, the family's questions intensified. They asked how injuries that severe could come from falling out of a car, tripping, or collapsing. They asked why the explanation kept changing and why Tyrone had been found alone without his phone, wallet, or identification. Because those details mattered. According to the family, Tyrone was initially admitted to the hospital as a John Doe. It was not Lulu who contacted the family to inform them. Instead, they say the hospital eventually called his mother. And that delay left them stunned. They questioned why, if Lulu had been with Tyrone, she did not contact his mother, father, grandmother, or siblings immediately. They questioned why she remained at the hospital for hours without reaching out to the people who could have identified him and provided critical information. And just when it seemed the confusion could not deepen, it did. The family says Lulu later left the hospital to return to the cabin to retrieve belongings, but when relatives contacted the cabin owner, they were told that an argument had been heard earlier and that Lulu had already removed their belongings before anyone else checked in. That account raised more questions than answers. According to the cabin owner, neighbors reported hearing an argument and described Lulu as the more aggressive party. They said Tyrone was not seen afterward, only Lulu moving items to the car despite wearing a boot on her leg from a broken ankle. For Tyrone's family, this information was alarming, not because it proved anything, but because it contradicted what they had been told. And ever since then, the same question has echoed through every conversation. How did Tyrone end up alone, severely injured, under a bridge in a city he was not from? The family has been careful not to claim certainty. They have repeatedly stated they were not there and do not know exactly what happened. But what they have said, clearly and consistently, is that the explanations they were given do not add up. They are not asking for blame. They are asking for clarity. As his sister put it, even if what happened was an accident, Tyrone should not have been left alone. Even if no harm was intended, someone who loved him should have stayed. Someone should have called his family. Someone should have made sure he was not abandoned on the side of the road. And that belief is what continues to drive their search for answers. Because when someone dies under disputed circumstances, silence does not bring peace. It only deepens the questions.
Say it again, brother. The pizza on the ground now flew out the box. The chicken wings has flew out the box. So he went to the hotel to check in on camera. He went to the Papa John's pizza place on camera. And guess what? Everything was working fine. Everything was working by God Almighty power. All bones, all limbs, nothing fractured in his head. He left the Papa John's people.
But when he got out that car.
When he got out that car. And guess what? Papa John's and the bridge less than 10 minutes apart.
And for Tyrone Davis Jr.'s family, those questions remain unresolved, waiting for the truth of what really happened after that argument in those minutes that changed everything. But there was one problem. Without an arrest, without a full report, and without publicly released evidence, those questions had no clear answers. As the investigation continued behind the scenes, the family turned to the public for support. They emphasized that this was not about speculation, but about accountability, about understanding what happened to a man who left behind children, family, and a community that depended on him. And that message resonated. Online tributes poured in. Friends, followers, and viewers who had known Tyrone only through his content expressed shock and grief. Many shared clips of his videos, highlighting his humor, his warmth, and his devotion to his children. Others shared messages calling for a thorough investigation. And soon enough, mourning became mobilization. Tyrone's children were now growing up without their father. Family members stepped in to provide stability, support, and continuity, but the loss reshaped everything. Routines changed, responsibilities shifted, grief became part of daily life. And still, the questions remained. As of the last public updates, no arrests had been announced. No suspect had been publicly named. The investigation remained open and details remained limited. Law enforcement urged patience while the family urged urgency. Those two positions did not always align because for Tyrone's loved ones, time was not neutral. Every day without answers felt heavier. Every unanswered question deepened the sense that something was missing. And that is where the story now stands, unfinished. There has been no conclusion, no clear resolution, and no public accounting of what happened in those final moments near the underpass. What remains are unanswered questions, a family still searching for clarity, and a truth that has yet to be fully brought into the light.
And for those who loved him, that unfinished ending is the hardest part of all. What do you think about it? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.